When I was a young boy, I tasted coffee. I had a cup of coffee that was given to me. I was about 14 or 15 years old. I tasted it. It was bitter. It tasted funny. It tasted like chemicals that I didn't want to. And I said to my mother and my brothers, I will never drink coffee in my life. Now I'm 49 years old now, okay? That was many, many years ago. It was 35 years ago. And I tasted it, knew it, and made that declaration, and I have never had a cup of coffee since then. I look at the coffee, people offer it to me and everything, and I just know that I don't want that bitter taste in my mouth, and I don't want that caffeine, and I know that, all right? So that's how I am able to make change. But that doesn't mean that that's the right way and that's the best way. And I can sit here with great confidence and say that I won't be drinking coffee, and I'll never have a cigarette. I can say that for certain, having quit 25 years ago. And I can say for certain about a lot of things in my life, that I won't be overweight, that I will stay in shape, and all of those kinds of things. For others, it's a daily struggle, and it's like it's coming to know yourself. So the path to the big picture is different for everyone. But the understanding has to be that the big picture is there, and its availability is there. And if you need to have a near-death experience, like Marilyn did, in order to get that big picture and be able to relax in the face of conflict, be able to not allow yourself to get stressed out over small things, being able to enjoy your present moments and find fulfillment and joy in them, then have that near-death experience, but have it in your mind only. Okay? So create that experience for yourself. One of the ways to do that is through meditation. Another way to do that is just by visualizing or just imaging it for yourself. Participate in your own funeral, in your mind if you have to. See yourself dying of a horrible disease and suffering. Go through it. Experience it. Die while you're alive. Experience that whole thing. And as you experience that, see for yourself that this doesn't have to be brought into form. That I can act it out in my mind like a dream, live through it, get the experience of it, and then decide, well, I don't have to bring this into my form any longer. And make then a decision not to do it. So whatever it takes for you, all I'm saying is that you don't have to go through it in the world of form. In your physical world, you can transform, go beyond your form. You can be metaphysical, go beyond the physical, experience it in your mind where there are no limits. There's no limits to your imagination. There's no limits to your thoughts, but literally be there. And then when you come out of it, realize that, okay, that's enough. I've done that now. Let me practice the big picture. Let me see it isn't anything that I have to really create in my life any more than that. And once you're able to do that, once you can create that for yourself, then you get all the benefits of the big picture. By the big picture, I mean, you know in your heart and in your soul that there's more to life than just what my body is going through. And you know that there's nothing worth getting yourself all bogged down about and getting all depressed about and all worked up about. You know it all. You see all of that. And everything that I'm doing to create that, like Marilyn, I'm always amazed at Marilyn, how she's able to just let all of that stuff just float by her. When the kids have this particular part, when my brother gets on her about that, or when things aren't going, how she just sort of calmly, and ever since that accident, has calmly just gone off in a corner and just sort of let it all work itself out. It's part of the surrendering process. When we take this power of this invisible part of us, it's so hard to define this. We call it a belief, or you call it a thought, or you call it your soul, or your spirit, or whatever. But that invisible part of you that really determines everything about your life. And you begin to say to yourself, all right, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be? To bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you. And you begin to question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words and he repeats himself and he smells bad and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk, and the drunk slurs his words and he repeats himself and he smells bad and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you. And you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know? Now, who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts there? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I mean, I've done that so many times in my own life, and things that don't seem like they're that important to other people. Like, my wife doesn't understand why certain things about my tennis game that I play every day that I've really challenged. I mean, I grew up with the belief that I couldn't hit a backhand. And it was for 10 years I told myself that I don't have a backhand, I can't hit a backhand. And then I began to change that belief around. And it wasn't that I just, practice. I began to visualize myself doing all the things that it takes to make a backhand work for myself. I began to do that with a serve. I began to do that with a drop shot. Instead of telling myself, I can't hit a drop shot, and then acting out on that, and a whole match will go by and a whole year will go by and I'll never hit a drop shot, or I'll never hit a lob, or I'll never try a spin serve, or whatever. If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, you act on that belief, and whether it's just a silly little thing like improving your tennis game, which isn't so silly if you're making your living off of it or if you're coaching it, or any other skill area, or anything in your life, change around the thought, as you think, so shall you be.
The next principle I call don't die with your music still in you. And who better to quote than Thoreau right here in Concord when he talked about some of us hear a different drummer and we must march to the music that we hear. But all of you, everybody watching, everybody here in this beautiful parish, all of you have some music playing. And all of you have a heroic mission. There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it. And too many of us are afraid to listen to that music and march to it. You out there, I know you have a book you wanted to write. I know there's a composition you wanted to compose. I know there's a song you want to sing someplace. Maybe you want to raise horses out in Montana. Or maybe you want to open up an ice cream shop on Cape Cod. Who knows what it may be. Maybe you just want to travel and see the world. Maybe you want to go into a relationship with someone but you've been afraid to, but your heart says it's the right thing to do. All of us feel something. And in Leo Tolstoy's famous novel, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, he asks this question that would be terrifying to me. He says, as he has his accountant from Moscow lying on his deathbed, contemplating the horror of this question, what if my whole life has been wrong? I've known what my music is. It's playing right now. As I stand here in front of you with these cameras and in this place, and as I sit down and write my books and tell the world what I know are my truths, I feel always completely on purpose and fulfilled. And no time will I ever come to the end of my life and say, what if my whole life has been wrong? Whoever you are, whatever that music is, however distant it may sound, however strange, however weird others may interpret it to be, don't get to the end of your life and know that you're going to leave and not have it played yet. Don't die with your music still in you. It's the message of the greatest teachers who've ever walked among us. It's the message I give to you today as one of the principles for success and peace in your life. I think the best line I ever got from my kids, I've always loved to use it, is my daughter Summer at 13 said to my daughter Serena at 11, it was at breakfast one morning, she just looked at her and said, well, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes? You never know what's going to come when you got kids around like that, especially that many. Serena, who can hardly stand anybody at that time of the morning, looked at her and said, that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever said to me. Don't even talk to me. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Why are you even talking? What do you mean if I didn't have any feet, would I wear shoes? That's so stupid. Of course not. Summer looked at her and said, look, don't get mad at me. I'm just wondering why you're wearing that bra. That's all. I had to write that down. I said, I follow them around. I still do it. They're in their 20s and 30s and 40s now. And I say something stupid. Come on, I need some material. Anyway, I looked at this prayer of St. Francis for years and years, 10, 15, 20 years go by, and I had no idea the significance of the person handing me, who in her home had gone and had this thing framed and put beautiful flowers around it, and it was really elegant and beautiful and proud to hang in the walls. I didn't even know what the prayer was or anything, but I would go by it, and every once in a while I would stop and just look at it and read it, and it was so powerful because it's really not a prayer. It's a technology. Where there is hatred, it's like, I've often thought of myself as an alchemist, especially after reading The Alchemist. If you haven't read The Alchemist, read The Alchemist, Coelho's book. It's about omens, which I'm speaking about here tonight. It's about things that show up that are there for you, and an alchemy is really the science of transferring one thing into another, converting something. Lead into gold, basically, is what the alchemy is. But the prayer of St. Francis is really about, it's not about substituting one thing for another. He doesn't ask for that. Let me take out some hatred and bring in some love. He says, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me be love. Let me bring love. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is darkness, light. In other words, let me convert hatred into love. Let me be that kind of a person. An alchemist, someone who can make those kinds of shifts. I practice it. My kids will tell you that. I practice it all the time in my life. If I see hatred, if I see anger, if I see it in a grocery store, I move in closer and stand close to someone who's yelling at one of their children or something, or berating or loud or whatever. And just, to me, my kids will say, Dad. I say, look, I'm not going in and slapping somebody around to create more violence. I'm just going to stand closer because I really believe that I can change that, shift that hatred into love. And you can do it, especially when your energy reaches a certain level. When you start moving, your intuition starts getting sharper, your psychic abilities, if you will, your ability to heal. All of these things begin to elevate as you move out of ordinary. You're still going to fill out the forms. I want you to know, I still fill out the forms. I went to a yoga class this morning. It was a new yoga class. I've never been there. And they had a form with like 30 questions on there. Questions and questions. I just want to do a yoga class here this morning, but you have to fill out all of these things. So I fill out the forms. What am I going to say? No, I am living at extraordinary levels of consciousness. I don't do forms. She does the forms for me. Please do the form. I fill out the forms. And when the IRS calls, I send them my money. I send them half almost of everything I get. I just do it. So it's not about putting down ordinary. It's about going beyond it. It's about converting ordinary into extraordinary, which is what I'm here to do tonight. And what I do all the time, everywhere, in every place
that you find me. You will not find me living at ordinary levels any longer. When I sit down on a plane, I reach out to see if there's somebody who might need some help. If it's a little person who has to reach up and put their bag up, to me that's an opportunity, and I glory in it, in just reaching out and serving somebody else. No, it's just the truth. It's just an opportunity to live at God consciousness, at higher levels of awareness. So the prayer of St. Francis, I would look at it, I would read it, and then, 7 or 8 years later, now 7 or 8 years, but when there's no time, when there's no time, you realize that everything is happening at once. And from this perspective, those 7 or 8 years were just a moment. They were just an instant. And I came to decide that I wanted to write a book called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And I got called to Assisi. I don't know why I got called to Assisi. My wife and I went there together. We sat in the Portiuncula in Assisi where St. Francesco had done his meditating and his healing work and so on and during his lifetime in the 13th century. My wife and I had, both of us, tears rolling down our faces, sitting in this little wooden, old, 800-year-old little chapel, surrounded by all these gold marble places and all of that. But here we were in this place. And I went out and walked in the fields where Francesco walked and tried to get the birds to line up the way he did. It was miraculous. And I came back in meditation, knew that the whole organization for that book, Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, was just so clarified that I was to write it, and it was based on each line of the prayer of St. Francis. Each chapter became one of those, each line became a chapter. I went back again to Assisi, was called back there again, 2001, and if you see the shift, you'll see an amazing healing took place. So it's just sort of an introduction to me that there is more to this whole prosperity consciousness, and prosperity when it comes, I'm speaking prosperity not financial, I'm speaking medically, physically, who we are. The health that we have and the bodies that we live in are susceptible to and amenable to divine law. Joel Goldsmith said that in the presence of the God realized, the laws of the physical universe do not apply. Gravity doesn't apply. The rules that you think cause and effect don't exist. Being able to have instantaneous healings from someone who's been told that they're going to die, it's all capable and possible. I went to Assisi at that time. I wore a brace every day on my knee. I had been a marathon runner, an ultra-marathon runner, a triathlete. I ran every day 8 miles a day for almost 30 years, 29 years. Missed one day in 29 years. And played a lot of tennis and all of that. And this right knee was just bone on bone. And orthopedic surgeons had told me that I'd have to have it replaced within the next 2 years. Otherwise, I'd be in a wheelchair. And I went to Assisi. Not for that reason. In fact, I didn't even wear my brace the day that we took a group of people up to in San Damiano, the place where St. Clare, from the Poor Clares, had lived. And we were walking up this winding staircase, and a guy named John Grable was behind me, and he was about a 200-pound man, and he had muscular dystrophy, and he had braces on his legs. And as the staircase narrowed, he couldn't get it, because this is how he would go up the steps, like this, and then he would go like this. And as it narrowed, he couldn't go up and he couldn't go down, and he just said to me, "What am I going to do?" He was right in back of me. I said, "Just put your arms around my neck, and I'll carry you up to the top." But I forgot I didn't have my brace on, and I got up about 4 or 5 steps, and all of a sudden I felt my leg just going, and I could see the headlines in the Assisi Daily News. Spiritual teacher arrives 40 dead at the bottom of the stairs. And as I was going down with John on my back, because there was just no cartilage at all in this knee, I saw Francesco. This is weird, I really did. And he was right there in front of me. He was a little man with a brown robe, and he went like this with both of his hands. Didn't say a word, and it was just a flash. Just an instantaneous flash, as if to say, "Stand." And I stood up, and I started walking up the steps with John on my back, and I went a little further, and then I started running with John on my back, and then I started raising my leg up, and I hadn't had that feeling in years and years because of the whatever it was that was in that knee, arthritis. My wife was waiting at the top of the stairs. She said, "What in the world is going on? Everybody else is out of breath. You're running with John on your back." And I said, "I just saw Francesco." And I went over and I put my hands together and I gave thanks because I knew a miracle had just taken place. So that was my second experience with St. Francis. Now, and there were so many others. But as I look back and I begin to see what a role he played in my life and what he was teaching, that this last time that I went, I was giving a talk in this church where St. Francis had been. It was built in the 10th century. And at the end of the talk, something happened to me. I was out of control, sobbing. And the entire room stood up and held their hands out And it wasn't like I was talking about St. Francis any longer. And this is really one of the key things that I'm saying to you here tonight, that when you reach a level, you'll hear about awareness a lot, but when you reach a level of higher awareness, till you get to a place within yourself when you are living your passion and it is so overwhelming that what you are putting your attention on, you become, and it becomes you. And Francesco entered my body, and I felt him, and I couldn't move. And I just stood there, the tears just flowing down my face. And people took pictures, and there's a big picture of Jesus in the back. So many of the cameras show these huge, I'm putting them in the book, these huge orbs, which are like these circular kind of things that show up in photographs that we just don't quite know what they are. There's a whole book written about it called Orbs. And they were right there, right at the base of where Jesus was in that picture, and right above my head. And Francesco and I became one in that moment as we were talking about it. And this is a consciousness that I really want to address. It's the same consciousness that all of you have every single night in your dream. So that when you go to sleep and you dream, anytime you want to be something or someone, it doesn't matter how old they are, it doesn't matter if it's your grandmother or your mom who has been gone for 2 years, who I see a lot. It doesn't make any difference if you want to be 4 years old. It doesn't make any difference if you want to have a new Mercedes in your driveway. You don't have to go to all the trouble you have to do in this level of consciousness. You got to get up, you got to get dressed, you got to go drive down to the dealership, you got to sit in the car, you got to write a check, all of the things that you got to do to have that Mercedes in your driveway. All you have to do is put your attention on it.